Make MatchFit Dovetail grooves in any size panel using just your router and our routing guide. It lets you cut perfectly spaced 4-inch dovetail grooves by indexing each from the one before. So let's get it assembled and learn how to use it. Begin by attaching the handle to the base using the included 1/4-20 hardware. Put a washer onto the screw, then feed that screw through the hole in the handle and through the matching hole in the guide base. Thread the flat nut onto the screw underneath the base and tighten with a Phillips screwdriver. Mount the Porter cable style adapter onto your router and set the router onto the boss in the center of the MatchFit base. Rotate the router so that handles and controls are free to use, and check the bottom of the router to find the best spots for attaching the clamps. This will help you decide which of the slots to put the clamps in. Our unique clamping system allows you to use just about any router with this base. Begin assembling the clamps by sliding the T-bolt up through the bottom of the base. Then slide a flat washer down over the T-bolt from the top, followed by the spring, the shoulder washer with its barrel fitted inside the spring, then the clamp body, clamp pivot, and finally the wing knob. Set the router back on the center boss of the base and rotate it until you've got the proper clamp position. Slide the clamps over the base and secure with the wing knobs, finger tight only. Note that with some of the thinner universal type plastic bases, you may need to remove the spring and the shoulder washer. If your router has built-in dust collection, be sure to align it to one of the openings next to the center boss in the router base. Mount the relief bit into the collet of your router and set the cut depth to 11/32, 8.5 millimeters, below the bottom face of the MatchFit router guide. Set the router between 14 and 16,000 RPM. Hold the cleat firmly against the edge of the stock and start the router. Cut the 1/4-inch relief groove through to the opposite edge of the panel. With the groove complete, shut off the router and let the bit stop spinning before moving the router guide. Set the cleat into the relief groove just cut and start the router. Cut the next relief groove with the cleat guiding along the previous one. Shut the router off and let it come to a complete stop. Any router of 1 horsepower or more can do the job, even if it doesn't have dust collection. Clean the grooves between cuts as needed. This will allow the cleat to slide more easily. And then repeat the steps to cut the rest of the grooves across your panel. Because the base is self-indexing, this panel can be as big as you need it to be. To cut the other half of the grid, reset the base along the adjacent edge of the stock. And once again, carefully run the cleat along the edge to form the first relief groove along this axis. Let the router come to a complete stop. Then use the newly cut relief groove to index the next one, just as we did before. Now I've been working right to left in this video, but the guide is reversible. It can work from left to right just as easily. In either case, keep following the same steps to work all the way across your stock. Our router bits are designed to cut clean even across grain, but even with plywood, it's just a good habit to cut across the grain first. Once all the relief grooves are cut, remove that bit from the router and install the dovetail bit. Set the cut depth to 3/8 of an inch, 9.5 millimeters, below the bottom face of the router guide. Set the router speed for this bit between 12 and 14,000 RPM. To begin cutting the dovetail grooves, set the cleat into the second to last relief groove you cut, so that the bit will cut the last relief groove. Start the router and cut the first dovetail groove along the same path of the last relief groove out past the far end of the stock. The cleat of the router guide has to run in the 1/4-inch relief grooves, so the dovetail grooves must be cut in the opposite order that you cut the relief grooves. Other than that, It's exactly the same steps. Cut all the dovetail grooves in order until you reach the end of the panel. Cut the final relief groove into a dovetail by setting the base cleat onto the edge of the stock, the same way that you started cutting the relief grooves. You now have a full grid pattern across the entire surface of your panel, with perfectly spaced grooves 4 inches, 101.6 millimeters, apart on center. Now you can cut MatchFit Dovetail Grids into just about any common sheet goods. Quality plywood for sleds and jigs, MDF for flatness, laminated tops for large work surfaces, and even torsion boxes with 3/4 tops. The world of MatchFit clamping and work holding is now within your reach. You can find the MatchFit Grid Router Guide at your favorite woodworking retailer, online, or at microjig.com.